Do you ever wonder why you are so sensitive to other people's energies, other people's vibes, why you feel really comfortable with some people and then other times you just want to flee the room and not even waste your time? Well, let's talk about interpersonal neurosynchrony. Hello and welcome back to the Kalopsia podcast. I'm your host, Sydney, and I'm so thankful that you guys clicked on this week's episode. And this week I wanted to talk about something a little bit more geared towards neuroscience, but it has been kind of a continuation of some of the topics that we've talked about here before, including how you choose who to surround yourself with, how to kind of prioritize and value your alone time, or how to sort through your inner circle and properly pick the people that you want to surround yourself with. Now, I'm sure that you guys have heard of the quote, "You are the company that you keep." A lot of the times we'll see this in even just relationship podcasts. A lot of the red flags for, men that we often hear is, well, if he has cheating friends, if he has bad friends, rude friends, then that is the type of person that he chooses to surround himself with, then that is a negative thing. That's a red flag. The same thing kind of applies for us, right? If you are constantly, surrounding yourself with people who love to go out, love to party, love to stay out until 6 a.m. on a nightly basis, then it is more likely that that is going to be the type of lifestyle that you upkeep for yourself. Now, when we talked about the law of attraction and trying to manifest this new life, this new circle, this new kind of framework and chapter of your life, whenever you're trying to kind of change your day-to-day life, change what you focus on, the law of attraction comes to mind. And what that law says is that who you choose to surround yourself with, the activities that you choose to pour into, what you choose to spend your time on is going to bring like things to you. It's going to bring more similar experiences your way. And so when we think about socializing and the law of attraction, when we talked about if you're trying to gear your friend group from this more party lifestyle into a more hiking, nature vibes group, right? The biggest thing that you might want to do is sign yourself up for activities in which you might meet more people who kind of align with that activity, who kind of align with that new lifestyle. And so when we think about this phenomenon of like attracts like, and you are the company you keep, it kind of invites us to think about, okay, why is this the case? Why is it that the people that I really surround myself with have such an impact on me, have such an impact on my life and how I not only carry myself through this life, but also how I perceive it? Now, I was watching a TED Talk, "You Are Contagious" by Vanessa Van Edwards. I was watching this TED Talk in which she described this study in which they had individuals, participants, sweat and have their sweat recorded on these sweat pads to be later smelled by tertiary individuals, right? And so they had two different groups. One group that had the sweat pads and recorded their sweat when they were working out, when they were just in the gym exercising and producing sweat. And then they also had a group that were first-time skydivers, first-time bungee jumpers, and they also had their sweat recorded. And then these people came up afterwards and they were given the sweat glands and they weren't told which was from which activity, and they were told to smell the sweat from these different individuals, right? And what they found was really interesting, and it's that cortisol, that stress hormone, is contagious. Those individuals who smelled the sweat glands of those individuals that were jumping, skydiving, bungee jumping, they themselves were evoked a cortisol-filled experience. They felt stressed. It showed that we as people are contagious, not only in our aesthetics and our vibes and our activities that we choose to do, but also on the biological level. So cortisol, the stress hormone, was quite literally contagious and noticeable, and just by smelling the sweat of the individuals who were stressed and thus produced that sweat. And so that just at a baseline tells us that this is kind of deeper than what we might assume when it says you are the company you keep. Surround yourself, choose wisely with the friends that you keep and the people that you choose to surround yourself with. There is a biological phenomenon in which we are seeing this direct one-to-one provocation of an emotional reaction. Now, in this TED Talk, something else that she brought up when we are thinking about how our socializing might affect the psychological, right? Here she brought up the hypothesis of the facial feedback hypothesis. Now, I had never heard of this. It might slightly come as common sense, but just to let you know that there is a legitimate study about it. This study from the University of Finland actually had individuals look at or interact with people who were displaying a real smile and people who were displaying a fake smile. The positive reactions were unilaterally evoked by the real smile, while the fake smile actually didn't evoke a reaction at all. So what this tells us on the neuroscience level is that when you are having interactions with people that you may no longer align with, surrounding yourself with people that you may not like, that you may not value, that you may not see as worth spending your time with. You're kind of forcing yourself to go out to this party. You're kind of forcing yourself to go out on that hike if you don't really want to be hiking. You're forcing yourself to do something that you don't really want to do anymore. Then that experience, that socialization is not only making you less memorable because you're not being as genuine, you're not being as authentic. It makes you less memorable, but it is actually also making you less likable. The study also showed that people who were exposed to that real smile, that authentic smile, were inherently evoking more positive reactions, and thus they were more likable. But what this points us to is the phenomenon that is called social contagion. Now, in a video on Diary of a CEO, the YouTube channel, Dr. Tara, a neuroscientist, discussed the existence of this thing called the social contagion. And one example that she drew was where if a friend of yours or an acquaintance of yours, somebody in your circle goes through a divorce, then you are then more likely to get a divorce within the next year just by having that person in your circle. Now, this may seem as a shock. Like, what? How can this exterior relationship affect my relationship and cause me to also have a higher likelihood of getting a divorce within that following year? Now, the definition of social contagion is the following. Social contagion is the phenomenon where behaviors, emotions, and ideas spread from one person to another within a group or social network. So it's kind of similar to how diseases spread, but we're seeing it being true for not only our emotions, but also our behaviors and our ideas. So this is already our first bell, our ding ding ding, to why it is so important to be wary and to be aware and to be picky when it comes to the connections that you keep, when it comes to the relationships that you choose to engage with. Now, I saw a friend of mine also post this, and it actually did really spur me to think more about what it means to keep this social contagion phenomenon in mind. Now, what she was saying in this video that she shared was how important it is to understand that the people who you surround yourself with and their values also reflect upon you. So if you hold this person dear, if you have a close friend who, holds values that are completely immoral or something that you deem immoral, maybe you recognize that they are wrong about this particular thing or that they are wrong about this other particular thing. Maybe they are sexist or maybe they are racist, and you understand this about them, you know this about them, but you choose to continue a relationship with them. These are extreme examples, of course, but the example stands true. If you are choosing to surround yourself with such people, then that means that you inherently are tolerating these types of characteristics from them. just by continuing on that relationship. Now, I do agree with that. I honestly do believe that this idea of social contagion is only proving this point further. If we see that this phenomenon is possible in how spreading from one person to another, their beliefs, their behaviors, their emotions and their stress, right, is contagious from one person to another, maintaining relationships with people whose morals and whose values do not align with yours are inherently compromising your belief system just by keeping that person around. While social contagion can foster positive reactions such as deeper empathy and further emotional connection between people, it can also be harmful in the perpetration of these harmful belief systems and trends. If a person jumps into a body of water 100,000 feet away from another person, right? Or let's say 100 feet away. I feel like 100,000 feet sounds like a lot. 100 feet away, there is another person in the water. The jump and that ripple that original person is going to induce is going to eventually affect the person that is that 100 feet away. And that is called the ripple effect. But the interesting thing about the ripple effect and what it's truly a metaphor for is how our emotional frequencies can also affect one another. And just like the presence of cortisol in your sweat when you are having a stressful situation occur and you're creating that stress for yourself, it is possible for that to induce a stressful response in other people. And we see this when you go into a room and there is a meeting going on and everybody in the room is stressed. It is visibly, it's palpable, it's tactile in the air. The same thing is true when it comes to other emotions as well, and when it comes to other mediums, right? When you walk into a room and everybody's laughing, everybody's happy, it's a dinner party, maybe everybody's gotten exciting news and everybody's sharing and everybody went on vacation, something like that, something positive happens, it's going to induce a more positive homogeneous or a more positive general frequency among those people. Now, if you walk into a room and it is very stressful, very, very angry, very, very tense, you are also going to feel that. What this invites us to think about is that our actions and our words are contagious. Our actions and our words can influence other people around us. And so it's important to realize that not only do we have the power to influence others, but so do they have the power to influence us. And that is why it is so crucial and so important to understand and to really take care in building that inner circle and building the people that you choose to surround yourself with. Now, a few weeks ago, we also talked about how sometimes it feels like if you are trying to push yourself out of your comfort zone, if you are trying to turn a new leaf, trying to build yourself up, trying to make a pivot in your life, maybe the people who are close to you aren't the ones who support you. Maybe the ones that are close to you are used to seeing you in that more negative, not negative, but, introductory phase of your life and aren't necessarily willing or predicting to see you thrive, to see you grow. Sometimes that disbelief that they have in you, that limiting belief that they place on you, will actually impact your capacity to rise above and to push yourself out of your comfort zone, to rise to that occasion. It is so important to keep in mind who you choose to discuss your projects with, who you choose to discuss your plan with, who you choose to share your successes with, just because of this social contagion phenomenon. Now, I'm not saying that it's crucial that you keep your secrets and that you hold every step of the way to yourself, you keep everything to yourself. Some people will say that that is the more positive way to go about it. Don't share anything about your progress until it's all done. I think that that can be difficult to do, especially as someone who doesn't really like keeping secrets. I feel like that is difficult for me to do, but it's also important to not go around talking about everything that you want to do, everything that you want to achieve, loud and proud to anyone who will listen. this idea of limiting beliefs not being only applicable to ourselves, but also outside of ourselves, and this phenomenon of social contagion and the ripple effect, it's so important to realize that other people's emotions, beliefs, and actions and morals affect us too. And so it's important to keep that in mind. Now, something else that I think is really important to notice here is how interpersonal neurosynchrony and this whole social contagion and how it also impacts our emotions and our thoughts, it also leads to physical synchrony. And I think that this is so important, especially when it comes to valuing peace or trying to focus on your mental health and your physical health. And if you are often surrounding yourself with people who are naturally at a higher stress level or choose to continue to perpetrate that high stress level, this is a very niche kind of description of a person, but if you find that the people who you surround yourself with might be causing you more stress, it might literally be this phenomenon of how neurosynchrony will also lead to physiological synchrony. And so this has been shown in not only matching of your step patterns, right? If you think back to a time where you were walking down the street with your friends or with your friend, and all of a sudden you notice that you are walking at the same pace, you're walking at the same step, right foot forward at the same time, left foot forward at the same time. That is an example of that physical synchrony. But it can also apply in these other ways that include your heart rate, your skin conductance, your breathing patterns, your cortisol levels. Not only that, but even your hormone levels. We see this in the menstrual cycle synchronization. In that interview in Diary of a CEO, Dr. Tara also describes how this goes back to our caveman days, where when there was an alpha male in the cave and there were several females, right? The purpose of the synchronization of these hormones was so that they had a higher likelihood of being able to produce a child. So if there was a miscarriage or if there was a problem within a pregnancy, the tribe or the clan, if you will, their priority was to impregnate as many women so that there was a higher likelihood of having a healthy child with the best genes, with the best everything. And so that's why it was super important for all of the females to be, fertile at the same time. And so that's where that synchronization of the hormone levels was born and evolved. But we still have it today. We see it when you are living with a bunch of women. They will often see this, or when you work close by a lot of different women, then a lot of the time this synchronization will occur. It still occurs today, not only within women, but also in all these different ways when it comes to stress. Now, something that I'm also thinking about here is, what do we do if we think that we have a leaky cortisol system? What if we are the ones that are sharing and spreading this kind of stress reaction with our circle? I don't want this to make it seem like it's an unfixable issue, that, it's insalvageable. You don't deserve any friends because you're always stressed. Not at all. Right? And a lot of us are put in this position due to circumstances. It trickles down from your workplace, it trickles down from your family, it trickles down in so many different ways. Now, I want to talk about the signs that Dr. Tara explained in that interview, because I think it's super important for us all to know. The signs of a leaky cortisol system will include belly fat. Something that is also from the caveman days is that when you had this high cortisol levels, it was usually having to do with your uncertainty of whether or not you will have access to food. And so what that would do is make your body produce more belly fat, so that if you couldn't have access to food for a certain amount of weeks or a certain amount of months, then you can slowly digest your belly fat so that you remain alive and living until you were once in contact with food again. And so it's stubborn fat. It's stubborn to get rid of, and it is really due to cortisol. So that's one sign that you have a leaky cortisol system. Another sign is that you have a lot of sleep disruption, and this doesn't have to do with if you have to wake up early for a certain shift or something like that. It's more so with your disruption of your circadian rhythm as a whole. Cortisol is a big part of our circadian rhythm. Cortisol reaches its peak and that induces the wake cycle. It's a sleep wake cycle. So when your cortisol is at its highest point, I believe that is when you will come to an awakened state, which is why they don't recommend to have coffee right at the beginning of your day, just because your cortisol levels are already at their peak. You don't need to add in more. It's more so better to introduce that a couple hours into your day when they have started to dip and when you are kind of getting more sleepy, and then you can rise it back up again. But I digress. Basically, sleep disruption and your circadian rhythm is going to be another big sign of having a leaky cortisol system. Now, beyond that, there is also the sign of indigestion and poor skin. Now, skin is also a reflection of our gut health, and our gut health and our brain are very interconnected. So if you are often stressed, chronically stressed, it is going to impact your gut, and that is going to lead to indigestion, maybe IBS, some trouble in your your gastrointestinal system. Now, that will also impact your skin. Your skin is also a big part of your psychological health. It is a big psychological marker to let you know how you are doing in that arena. And it's going to be another marker, another sign of how you are doing, and it can be a sign for higher cortisol levels. Now, the things that we can do here that Dr. Tara highlighted is the two following things. Number one, we can exercise. Cortisol can actually be sweated out through aerobic exercise. So this is a great tool for us. It is probably why they say that exercise is good for you. And I don't want it to seem like it's this huge, you got to go lifting, you got to do whatever. Going on walks, doing aerobic exercise, the key is not being sedentary. Whatever the word is, not being completely stationary throughout your entire day is going to inevitably help you. The second thing is journaling, therapy, speaking to someone, talking to yourself through the journal, getting the thoughts out of your brain and onto paper, out of the inside of your body and out into the outside of your body, having it spoken about, having it be something that you can read and reflect and discuss, that is going to help you as well. And not only is that going to help your skin conductance or help the physical synchronies that you have with other people, it's not going to leak into other people's lives, but it's also going to foster deeper social connections. At the end of the day, interpersonal neurosynchrony has a purpose. It deepens relationships. It is something that we have evolved to be able to do in order to reinforce social bonds, promote neural efficiency, and allow us to use our energy and our brain power for more important tasks, right? So it is very important to take care of not only the circle that you keep, but also be wary and aware of how you are affecting those around you as well. It goes hand in hand. And so I thought this was super, super interesting, this whole social contagion, interpersonal neurosynchrony, and I hope that you guys found it interesting. I think that's all I have for you guys today. Please let me know if you have any book recommendations or any podcast recommendations of something on the topic. I want to learn so much more, and I am really excited to have discovered this new phenomenon. I've discovered through this also that I need to get back into TED Talks. I used to listen to them so much more often, and there is so much to learn through these experts, honestly, and it's only presented to you in the most engaging way when they have to present to someone. It's built and crafted for it to be engaging and inspirational, and it's just, I love it. I love them. So that is my recommendation that I'd like to leave you guys with. But please let me know if you guys enjoyed this topic. If you want to hear something similar, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to leave a review. Share with your friends or family members who might enjoy, and don't forget to reach out at kalopsiapod, KALOPSIAPOD on Instagram and TikTok. And it's at Synejotita, SYDNEYDJOTITA on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Thanks again, and I will see you next Friday. Bye.